You're listening to the Climate Dispatch podcast, presented by Sierra Club Angeles Chapter and Stranded Astronaut Productions. Available everywhere you listen to podcasts, we cover the stories of the climate crisis, from celebrating the wins to breaking down our fears, all while sharing collective hopes for the future. I'm your host, Taya Jeanette, and this week we're uncovering the unwanted emissions lurking in your home and the near century-long propaganda campaign that created this so-called natural gas. Natural gas, renewable natural gas, freedom gas, it goes by a multitude of nicknames. But scientifically, we know it as methane, a greenhouse gas emission contributing to the climate crisis. Methane is a common presence in our homes through gas appliances. From cooking on a gas stove, baking in your oven, heating your home, or even drying your clothes. The adoption of natural gas into our homes coincided with a decades-long advertisement and propaganda campaign in the US. A 1934 ad called the newly branded natural gas nature's perfect fuel. The phrase cooking with gas became ingrained into cultural references like Disney cartoons. These campaigns were careful not to mention the harmful and dangerous pollutants that come along with gas appliances.
When I learned how many things in our buildings exist that are polluting us, I was in shock. And then I got angry. And then I was upset to know that I've lived my whole 34 years of life with these things in my home, knowing that they were harmful for me and my family.
That's Kim Orbe, Sierra Club Angeles Chapter's Senior Conservation Program Manager, who has been on a mission to encourage building electrification, a term that isn't exactly common vernacular.
I know when I first heard about building electrification, I had that exact same thought. What is this campaign? What is this issue? And essentially what building electrification is, which is also referred to as like building decarbonization, is the process of transitioning buildings to all electric buildings where electricity for heating, cooling, cooking, or any other energy needs is replacing fossil fuels like natural gas, propane, or oil. We are beings who are very hesitant to change. So I know that is part of the battle is getting people familiar with the alternatives that do exist out there, the cleaner options, the zero emission alternatives that are no longer contributing to polluting us in our buildings where we work, where we live, where we play.
Kim got involved in the Building Electrification, or Healthy Homes campaign, first through her work with open space access at Sierra Club, combating air pollution from oil refineries outdoors. When she started to lead campaigns for building electrification, she quickly realized how pollution was impacting us in our own homes.
So a big pollution source of like space and water heating in our homes right now emits NOx pollution. And what NOx pollution essentially is it's that main thing that causes smog. So if you're like on the freeway coming into downtown, you see that big gray nasty layer, a big contributor of that is NOx emissions. And those are things that are existing in our homes from natural gas, from methane, from all this pollution that exists in our buildings. And they're really harmful because they particularly attack our respiratory systems. So this is really bad for public health.
Gas appliances like gas stoves and water heaters emit dangerous pollutants like carbon monoxide, nitrous oxides, fine particulate matter, and even formaldehyde into our homes. This has been shown to lead to respiratory illnesses like asthma, cardiovascular disease, and premature death. One UCLA study that focused specifically on smaller apartments, which tend to have lower ventilation, found 98% of apartments with gas appliances had peak levels of NOx emissions. The levels in these apartments exceeded national air quality regulations for outdoor emissions, meaning they would have been illegal if measured outside.
It seems pretty criminal to me that it's 2025. We have so much technology that has been developed and that we're still living in buildings with these toxic things that we're breathing in on a daily basis. I don't talk about it as a building electrification campaign. I talk about this is the clean air campaign. There's so much work that we're doing to clean up our transportation, but we don't really talk about what do we do to clean up our buildings. And that's just part of the education that we all really have to commit to doing, because there are so many alternatives that are better for us.
This Sierra Club campaign is getting communities involved through on-the-ground organizing that prioritizes explaining what the issue is and how it impacts us.
I think for us, it's mostly education. Having events, webinars, inviting people to get involved in the campaign to just learn about what this issue is, why we're fighting for clean air, why we're advocating for new buildings to have all electric equipment and appliances, because it sounds fancy, right? Like, oh, buildings with all electric. And it's like, no, breathing clean air should not be a luxury. There's so much information and research that we have just on the impacts on methane. So to take it a step further, there's so much analysis that the EPA has done. Specifically, they have this program called the Co-Benefits Risk Assessment, which demonstrates the effect that methane gas burning equipment in residential and commercial buildings has on people. Approximately 76,000 cases of asthma attacks per year because of methane gas burning equipment. About 30,000 lost school days annually. 130 premature deaths each year. When we don't know what we don't know, it's hard to encourage people to transition. But once we see these facts before us, it's really clear that we need to transition, not only because of climate, but to protect our public health, the health of our loved ones, of our families. People become more prone to asthma and respiratory diseases. The propaganda that is getting pushed in front of us, we don't know that it's harming us, that it's killing us. So that is why this campaign is so important, why we need to combat the propaganda, the greenwashing, because those things are happening. The Latino community too has been tokenized in all of this propaganda as well. I think a couple of years ago, I saw something about they're trying to take your tortilla making away or something, and it gets pretty ridiculous. So the work is ahead of us, because we know that the fossil fuel industry spends billions of dollars putting this marketing and branding in front of us, so that it makes it so much harder for people to want to transition.
In the face of misinformation and deeply woven propaganda, education is a pivotal tool to identify, understand, and combat methane emissions in our homes.
When I understood the links between social justice and climate justice, I started realizing the deceptive campaigns of this industry.
Julie Mallat founded the Climate Propagandist to identify fossil fuel propaganda in our media and turn these tactics into educational tools.
The Climate Propagandist is an education project I started with a mission to empower a new generation of climate communicators. And so our mission is to expose the fossil fuel industry's propaganda and also give storytellers the creative and strategic tools to counter it. So we want to equip communicators and communications activists with not only persuasive tools to reshape public opinion and influence policy, but also the critical thinking to stop and spot harmful narratives in their tracks. And one of the biggest things we care about is actually to de-academize climate communication. So this means making it accessible, mainstream, using media, pop culture, and cultural storytelling to bring these ideas to life in a way that actually resonates.
Propaganda wasn't always a negative term, or originally associated with manipulative messaging. At its root, it's a persuasive communication tool, a neutral means of disseminating information.
That's the P word, right? Propaganda. I love this term because it makes people stop and actually think. It sounds controversial, but really it shouldn't be, because propaganda comes from the Latin root propagare, which essentially means to spread, to propagate. And so at its core, propaganda is just communication designed to influence and persuade. And social media has only amplified this. It's turned propaganda from a top-down approach to something that's much more participatory. So now we're all propagandists. We all have the means to propagate stories, to shape opinions, and influence culture in a way. So whether it's through memes, reels, tweets, you name it, social platforms have turned passive users into active campaigners. And at the Climate Propagandist, we help people take that power and use it for good.
In order to use propaganda for good, we first need to be able to spot how it's influenced our own thinking and the greater public subconscious. Methane's rebrand to natural gas has in many ways been embedded into our culture through these marketing tactics.
Yes, so methane gas, or as we've come to call it, natural gas, it's especially fascinating to me because it's incredibly deceptive. It's not even a recent PR trick. It's a strategy that really goes back a century. And well, the fossil fuel industry didn't exactly invent the term natural gas, but they've leaned heavily into this reassuring tone, using it ad after ad to make it sound harmless. And back in the 1930s, people were being sold on the idea that methane was clean, pure, magical fuel, as I literally called it the nature's perfect fuel. And I mean, you kind of have to hand it to them. Like, it worked really well. Just one word, natural, and suddenly people think it's a gift from Mother Nature, not a dangerous climate harming fossil fuel. There's some really brilliant reporting on this by journalist Rebecca Leber, and she's been uncovering this century-long marketing campaign that convinced us gas was safe and healthy. And it's really challenging to break down these narratives because when fossil fuels consumption is tied to national identity, to pride, or even spirituality, questioning gas feels almost like questioning someone's traditions or religion.
As consumers become more aware of the impacts that products have on the environment, the fossil fuel industry has doubled down on their marketing tactics. From framing methane as a solution to transition towards renewable energy, to rebranding it further as responsible source gas or renewable natural gas. It's becoming harder for even the more conscious consumer to pick out fossil fuel propaganda. In recent years, the US administration has even tried to rebrand this as freedom gas, effectively tying the national identity to methane. We wanted to uncover more of this decades or even century-long propaganda campaign to bring methane into our homes. The more we looked into it, the more advertisements we realized were tied to promoting this fossil fuel. I asked our research producer, Meg Pruce, to dig even further into this history, starting with the phrase cooking with gas. Well, hi, Meg.
Hi, Taya.
We asked you to dig a little bit into this history, and Julie, I think, said the 1930s is when we really started hearing phrases like cooking with gas. What did you end up uncovering?
Most Americans will know that the phrase cooking with gas has come to be synonymous with doing things quickly and efficiently. But yeah, it definitely didn't come from nowhere, and it was really earlier in the 20th century, in the 1930s, that this phrase cooking with gas first cropped up. And really, Hollywood had a big part to play. The American Gas Association essentially planted it in comedians' routines, comedians like Bob Hope, people that were part of like national consciousness. And essentially the gas industry was embedding positive messaging into popular culture and helping normalize those ideas.
So we have the 1930s. We're hearing this in comedian speeches. Are we seeing, these kinds of adverts too coming out? Who is this targeting?
I think they were really trying to target that kind of middle to upper class white Americans to get a functioning, efficient, kind of clean kitchen that made women's lives more manageable.
So it's this advert of, we can make your life easier. Just invite toxic emissions into your home.
It was very much focusing on the kind of shiny exterior of like how to speed jobs up and bring a bit of like, glamour into people's lives as well. It was moving away from the charcoal or wood kind of stoves that people used earlier in the 20th century. And it played a huge part in just normalizing that and making it aspirational as well, I think.
What were the strategies that were kind of changing with also all of the new avenues that we had? We started inviting way more TVs into our homes. We started having the internet in the early 90s, and there were so many other touch points that the gas industry could suddenly be communicating with consumers.
Yeah, 100%. It kind of moved from the stereotypical TV marketing, things like Word to the Wives, these kind of classic 1950s, 60s dramatizations of the modern kitchen, using celebrities, that kind of thing. A surreal example from the late 80s when the gas industry decided to release a pretty cheesy rap video, which emphasizes ideas like gas being cleaner, cheaper, explaining reasons why you should cook with gas, like it's cleaner, more precise and cheaper. And funnily enough, also giving you safety tips like don't get your hair too close, make sure plastic items are not too near the flame so they don't melt, but conveniently not mentioning the toxic pollutants that are in your home.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that it would have safety tips like don't get near the, burning flame in your home.
I know, right? I guess it was trying to make it cool, but looking back, it's very much of its time. But I think all of those, as you say, like different platforms, different avenues, different methods of making those ideas just kind of like safe and normal within society have all helped to get to where we are today.
Well, thanks for looking into that century-old marketing campaign that the fossil fuel industry has been pushing for methane, natural gas, freedom gas, a perfect fuel by many names, and, doing a little digging for us. It's horrifying, but not unexpected by them.
I realized how much it was already weaved in this insidious way. It was pretty shocking, but yeah, not that surprising, unfortunately.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
With a topic as complex as the climate crisis, how do we get people to act when it's less painful to look away?
Wildfires blazing through Greece and Turkey have horrified people in the region.
What makes a difference for whether people accept climate change is whether it speaks to their culture, values, and identity.
Welcome to Climate Shifted, a podcast where we think about what works to shift hearts and minds on climate.
Climate communication doesn't have to be academic. It can be engaging, impactful.
Draw out what their concerns are, values, volition for change. It's massively more effective than what I call yell, tell, and sell.
Climate Shifted brings you conversations with psychologists, behavior designers, and artivists, uncovering what actually works to shift perception for climate action. No more failed approaches, just concentrated wisdom on making climate messages that stick. Find us at climateshifted.com and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Back to our conversation with Climate Propagandist founder Julie Mallat and Sierra Club senior organizer Kim Orbe, we shifted our focus to what we can do to create healthier homes. The Sierra Club Building Electrification campaign is focusing on policy change to transition to clean, fossil fuel-free buildings in order to help us protect our health while meeting our climate goals.
For like the past 3 years, we were really successful in getting cities to pass building electrification ordinances. And essentially what that is city building code saying that any new buildings being constructed are going to have all electric equipment and appliances. And those look very different by city or county. Berkeley was the first city in California to pass their building electrification ordinances. And then we had like over 70 cities across the state pass their own building electrification ordinances, which was huge. And the reason that that's also really amazing is because we know that building all electric buildings is, if not the same price, even more affordable than building with gas hookups, with gas infrastructure.
In 2019, Berkeley passed a first-of-its-kind ordinance to prohibit natural gas in new buildings. The law would serve as a blueprint for other local jurisdictions across California, Washington, and New York. Los Angeles City Council voted unanimously to ban gas appliances from new constructions in 2022, showcasing a growing movement towards building electrification. But this trend would soon be struck with legal challenges.
So Berkeley was sued, and this ended up really slowing down, halting local building electrification ordinances because people don't want to get sued. And we know who put money behind suing Berkeley, the fossil fuel industry. We have other utility companies like SoCalGas who are fighting every climate policy, spending millions of dollars, even using ratepayer money. They've gotten sued by California for using taxpayer money to fight climate policy, because they want to keep us choking and breathing in polluted air because it's a business for them. They don't care about us. They don't care about kids missing going to school, or that they're going to school with asthma, or that your grandparents are, having respiratory issues because of these things that are existing in our homes that are killing us. But we pivoted, and we have a big opportunity. We've been really involved these past 2 years with this agency called the Air Quality Management District. A big opportunity with this agency, which has jurisdiction over LA County, Orange County, Puerto San Bernardino, and Riverside. Their whole responsibility as an agency is to set standards through rulemaking to clean up our air. That is literally the whole reason this agency exists, is to clean up our air for stationary sources and mobile sources. So we've had the opportunity to advocate and support rules that are being proposed to be zero emission standards. So essentially saying no more gas, no more methane, no more NOx pollution for certain equipment.
These rules focus less on replacing appliances today and look towards a more convenient swap in the future. The idea is that by the time you go to replace your furnace or water heater, the compliance dates will already be established, and the only available options will be electric appliances, making the healthier home option the standard for consumers.
SoCalGas joins these agency meetings, always giving public comment saying that the rules are not feasible, that they're going to cost people, that their rates are going to go up, that they're going to get displaced because their rents are also going to go up, and that people can't afford this. They're there to weaken the rules, which they have accomplished. The rules are no longer looking like zero emission rules. They have been very weakened. And ultimately, we know that they're trying to kill them because, again, they're worried about their profits. The fossil fuel industry is literally fighting climate policy at all levels that they can. But we know that there's power in numbers. They're only one entity. They're only the fossil fuel industry. And when we all mobilize and show up together, we win.
It's funny that SoCalGas is almost extending themselves as a voice of the community out of concern for rising consumer prices. Because I remember I think last winter, or the year before that maybe, when my gas bill was suddenly $200, $300, when it's usually $20 a month, because we had extraordinary winter here in Los Angeles. But it really showed that they don't actually care about consumers, and also aren't really thinking about risk management, as we are seeing the climate crisis continue to have more unexpected weather patterns. But it is a really fair concern from community members, and especially renters like myself, because for homeowners, there are all these rebates, there are a lot of ways to switch out, and that's always been a little bit of my own personal bias and ingrained in me, probably from a lot of these propaganda campaigns, as to why, as a renter, I feel a slight aversion to it.
I'm a renter too. I live in Koreatown. So those are all really real, valid concerns, to how is this going to affect me? Like rebate programs, we're working to make sure that, there is accountability to landlords and developers, to make sure that they enter contracts or whatever, or are acknowledging that they're not going to raise people's rent if they're applying for rebates or incentive programs. So know that we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that doesn't affect renters, because renters tend to be the biggest population in LA County and low income. So something that I always try to encourage people is make the change in your home. I'm always on a budget. I wrote a blog, I think 2 years ago, and I did some quick searches, and I'm like, electrifying your apartment or your home can be really easy. You don't have to switch out the stove. You don't have to switch out your heat pump, transitioning to an all electric kettle instead of turning on your oven or your stove to heat water. That's a really small, impactful thing that you can do. And an electric kettle costs $15 to $20, depending on how fancy you get it, right? I always encourage people, there's alternatives, really affordable alternatives. Induction stoves are extremely affordable now. They're durable. You can cook all the same food that you do. Yeah, the technology has gotten really advanced, even for induction cooktop. I feel like I'm always looking at intentional gifts for people. So it's why not something that's going to help clean up people's air, like gifting someone an induction stove or gifting someone an electric kettle if they don't have it, as just a thoughtful gift that I want clean air for you.
I love a useful gift. I did ask for a vacuum for Christmas this year, so that's the kind of thing that I'm considering and asking for. And I think that is a really great start in just having these swaps where we can start to feel like we have a little bit of sense of control too over what we're allowing into our homes. And as much as we can have our own kind of personal shifts and big policy changes, we do need to have a larger consumer buy-in, a behavior change that we see, not just here in California, not just here in the US, but on a more global scale. So Julie, with studying a lot of the propaganda and marketing, how do you see marketing and creativity actually playing a positive role in not only breaking down the negative impacts of things like natural gas in our homes or methane in our homes, but also in encouraging better practices in creating climate-aware, conscious, and action-oriented community?
For generations, we've grown up, associating gas stoves with convenience, with progress, and even our cultural identity. And big gas has had a head start of nearly a century to infiltrate our culture, shaping our kitchens, lifestyles, and even our idea of what modern life should look like. But a core belief at the Climate Propagandist is if marketing and creativity build our addiction on gas, then they can absolutely help us break free from it. And this also means thinking like culture makers, not just as campaigners. Corporate propaganda is currently shaping the way most people see the world. And that's why we need skilled communicators, our own propagandists who can use storytelling and persuasion to shift power away from fossil fuel and polluting industries and towards different vision of the future. And the very first step is actually pretty simple. It's to stop using big gas language. Words matter a lot, and I've come across the study by the Yale program on climate change communication, testing different terms with about 3,000 people, and over half of the respondents had a positive reaction when they heard natural gas. But when researchers changed the term to natural methane gas or just plain methane, positive feelings dropped significantly. So that's exactly why we need to stop echoing industry language. Don't call it natural gas, call it fossil gas, frack gas, or just call it methane gas, which is what it is. So reclaiming the language is the first step. And then the next step is shifting how gas is culturally perceived. Right now, gas appliances are framed as status symbols. So campaigns need to do, I think, what anti-smoking efforts did decades ago, reframe gas as unhealthy, as outdated. Smoking went from glamorous to socially embarrassing, at least in the US. So we need to trigger that same shift. Most people don't realize that cooking with gas fills their home with harmful pollutants. These are the same toxic chemicals we can find in a car exhaust, which is directly linked to asthma, to heart disease, to other respiratory problems. So that are powerful facts that we can creatively weave into stories. And some creators are already doing amazing work on this front. And one of my favorite recent examples of this is the Hot and Toxic campaign from the Gas Leaks Project. They took something deadly serious, which is the harmful health impacts of gas, and turned it into something hilarious, like a parody of a reality TV show.
Hot and Toxic, as Julie mentions, is a campaign by the Gas Leaks Project that sees the 21 toxic pollutants that come along with methane personified into toxic housemates in a satirical reality TV show. The ripped, bikini-clad housemates move in with unsuspecting house owner Janet in a setting similar to well-known reality shows like Love Island. Meanwhile, the campaign provides the hard facts to intrigued audiences on how natural gas is taking over their homes in real life.
So it's funny, it's clever, and it's relatable. And that's exactly the kind of bold culture-making storytelling we need more of. So our job as climate communicators is to saturate popular culture with that powerful and creative stories to reclaim and redefine what a desirable home looks like: clean, safe, and electric powered. And then I have another example of that I really liked. It's an example of reframing the energy debate in recent years. The campaign called #PumpsForPeace by Rewiring America. So this was launched after Russia invaded Ukraine, when fossil fuel lobbyists were pushing the classic drill more and frack more rhetoric in the name of energy security. But then instead of playing into that framing, the campaign flipped the script entirely and saying the real path to energy independence wasn't through more fossil fuels, but through mass electrification. And so Rewiring America designed a series of posters that looked just like World War II posters and propaganda, with bold graphics and slogans.
The Rewiring America's Pumps for Peace campaign propaganda posters came complete with rallying slogans like "Heed the Cry," "Electrify," and "Send Putin away, get a heat pump today."
It's really a masterclass in taking the industry's own narratives around patriotism and security and turning them against fossil fuels. And it reframed electrifying home as an act of national strength rather than just a niche climate solution. So, for decades, the fossil fuel industry has tied itself to national pride and economic security, from, as you mentioned, freedom gas to political slogans like "Drill, baby, drill." What's really smart about these campaigns is that they use the exact narratives and the same emotional triggers that the fossil fuel industry uses, but flip them, right? Making electrification feel patriotic, urgent, culturally relevant. And I think it's really smart to use the same frames of electrifying homes as an act of national strength and pride instead of just an individual climate action.
Creative ideas like these marketing campaigns that are making their way into our propaganda machine, and resources like the Sierra Club Building Electrification campaign that's helping educate local communities on the impacts of methane, are making it easier to be more aware as consumers and explore our options for cleaner homes. But as we've seen with SoCalGas's pushback on policy changes, and the branding of methane's further dive into our subconscious, the fossil fuel industry won't go down easily. We have to stay vigilant, and these communication tools are more important now than ever to combat the ever-presence of greenwashing and propaganda.
The simplest rule I live by is this: if the industry solution lets them keep drilling, extracting, and burning fossil fuels, then it's not a solution, it's a smokescreen. The challenge is today, greenwashing is rarely obvious. They've become really good at it. So it's a bit like dealing with a toxic ex who's a master manipulator. And I recently did a webinar where I unpacked how the industry's propaganda techniques are exactly like being stuck in a toxic relationship. And a lot of people resonated with this framing. So, for example, there's love bombing. So this is when the gas industry overwhelms us with feel-good imagery, with emotionally charged narratives. And so this tactic is designed to project comfort and safety, and it makes fossil fuel look friendly and harmless. Then we have also gaslighting, for example. So instead of admitting their primary driver of the climate crisis, gas companies position themselves as climate leaders and solutionists. And then when gaslighting fails, the industry plays on emotions and fear and nostalgia specifically. It's the tactic of emotional manipulation, which a lot of us know too well. So they scare us with those claims that, shifting away from methane gas would crash the economy, would raise energy costs, or lead to shortages. Or they'll hit us with nostalgia, reminding us how reliable and comforting gas appliances have been historically, as if, breaking away would somehow betray tradition. If we want people to embrace electrification at scale, we need to do more than just explain why it's better. We need to rewire its meaning in public consciousness. And that's how we'll finally break this century love affair with gas.
Paying attention to the messengers is really important too. The red flags are there to go off with the toxic eggs analogy here. Yeah, I think it's pay attention who the messenger is and just communicating to friends and loved ones that the stuff that we're living with is bad for us. I always, to Julie's excellent points, I don't even use clean energy or clean I'm like, it's fossil fuel powered. Like, it's fossil fuels. It's pollution. So just, talking to a friend or a neighbor to just educate that is what we're living with right now and how harmful it is, because ultimately this is a battle for two. It's for people and planet. I think something that has been exciting to see in this transition is we're already seeing like heat pumps, which they can do both like space and water heating and cooling. They've already been outselling like their gas-powered counterparts. Heat pumps outsold by 21% in the US in 2023. So that's like people choosing heat pumps, clean alternatives to like gas furnaces. So there is a trend happening. They tend to target middle class or wealthier communities. And that doesn't work. So making sure that we're also like, when we're advocating for all electrification or a just transition, that it is centering the voices in the communities who are already being impacted by climate change, because climate change is here.
Breaking up with methane requires us to confront the decades of fossil fuel propaganda that has rebranded it as natural gas, as something that belongs in our homes, and as something tied to cultural identity. Education on the harmful public health impacts of methane, policy changes swapping out these gas appliances, and a cultural shift away from this toxic X will all be necessary to create healthy homes and collectively push towards a fossil fuel-free future.
Hi, it's Megan from the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, here with your weekly call to action. This week, we're inviting you to party with us. Come celebrate Pride Month by joining us on Saturday, June 14th from 5 to 8 p.m. for a vibrant outdoor celebration of LGBTQ+ joy, community, and the public lands that tell our shared stories, surrounded by the breathtaking beauty of the San Gabriel Mountains. This isn't just a party, it's a movement to honor and protect the national monuments and landscapes that reflect our full, diverse history. Enjoy dazzling drag performances, delicious food, and plenty of space to be your full, authentic self. Whether you're LGBTQ+ or an ally, there's a place for you here. Come loud and come proud. The event is free, but space is limited. Register now at sc.org/prideoutside2025. That's sc.org/prideoutside2025.
Thank you for listening to the Climate Dispatch podcast. I'm your host, Taya Jeanette, and playing us out is Harry Katz and the Pistachios with their song Global Climate Strange.
Although we've walls now. And there's a river between us. Drowned out in an ocean of sound. Although we've always seen the light, we didn't do enough in time. Although we've always known what is right, it's like we defied it out of spite.
The Climate Dispatch is a production of Stranded Astronaut and the Sierra Club Angeles chapter, produced by myself, Tay Jeanette, Meg Pruce, and Megan Spatz. Audio engineering and editing by Maxfield Biggs, original theme music and score by Phil Hamilton, and graphics by Cirrus Marlo Sama.